check our microphone really quick. Check, 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 check. Check, 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 check. Nice. Check, 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 check. Oh. What is going on, guys? Gonna definitely need some time to loosen up. It is quite cold, especially for this time of year. Unseasonably cold, which is unfortunate, but we press on. Jim and Dana said hello. Can't stay, but hello. Thanks for saying hi, Jim and Dana. Keegan said hi. Hey, Keegan. What's going on? Gonna start really slow. Oh. So what's on tap for the stream tonight? I'm gonna be answering some questions. Probably doing some drill demonstrations. In between, I'm gonna be, doing some of my own drills. Stuff I've been working on in my own game. And we'll do that for, maybe an hour or so. Maybe longer. See how everyone's feeling on a rainy Wednesday night. I posted a short earlier today that I thought was actually pretty funny. And I don't know, maybe it just hasn't gotten picked up yet, but the views are way down from where we usually see them. So go check it out. Tell me what you guys think. Who else is here? Asia Mohammadi said hi. Hey, Asia. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for saying hi. Keegan, I got the 229 Army to subscribe. Tell me more, Keegan, about the 229 Army, but I'm very intrigued. But that's amazing. I appreciate you spreading the word, right? I mean, they call it social media for a reason, right? We want to, at some point, take advantage of that network effect, right? So really working on slow and smooth in transition. I've been trying to find time to get to the grass, outdoor range and do a stream from there during the day sometime this week, but it's been cold and rainy pretty much the whole week. So that would not really have been super feasible. But we carry on. Been doing lots of reps into the net here. Oh. Got to do a better job keeping my balance. Something I've been trying to focus on, but still working on getting loose. Oh, Keegan said, I'm a YouTuber, have my very own thing called the 229 Army going on. That's amazing. Very cool, Keegan. Well, I appreciate you you lending your support to the channel. That's very, very cool. And then Mo said, can we hear a fart? You certainly can on parts of the internet that aren't this part. Just working on making a smooth and balanced swing. You find a lot of good things happen when you key in on those factors. Sofa King also wants to hear a fart. No, but you know, if that does change, you'll be the first to know. These poor golf balls are getting pretty worn out from just getting smacked over and over and over again. If you guys have any questions, any drills you're working on, any areas of focus that I can help with, keep practicing that swing. Yeah, I will. That is what I'm doing in here. Thanks, lovely rat. Caleb said hi. Hey, Caleb. I just recently got my first golf lesson, and he told me to open the club face in the backswing. Does that sound right? That question's from Cody. And what it's hard to say, Cody, without knowing, you know, was your club face, you know, extremely shut on the way back, and that's why he was suggesting you try to open it, right? What I would tell you is a great checkpoint, though, is when you get the club back to, you know, when your lead arm is parallel to the ground, right? We want that club face, the angle of that club face, to be pretty much in line with our spine angle, right? So this spine angle here and my club face angle there, right, when you look at it on video. And that's a great place to start to, trying to see as a checkpoint, right, where in the swing we want the club face to be. So, but assuming that, you know, your club face wasn't super shut already, right, my personal opinion is that I don't like to feel a lot of forearm rotation, right? Like a lot of opening in the backswing and then subsequently, you know, a lot of turning over in the downswing. Quite the opposite, in fact. I like to feel, you know, like the club face is really stable and I'm just kind of rotating it in an arc around my body. You know, and the club face stays, you know, theoretically pretty stable and square to that arc or that path throughout the swing. So I know that doesn't answer your question necessarily, but that's where I would start. Swazi says, I'm brand new to the sport. I played maybe 5 full rounds, around a 30 handicap. Is it wise to get lessons? Thinking of going to Golf Tech. So I definitely think it's a great idea to get lessons. Just getting somebody who is trained or has, a lot of experience in evaluating your golf swing, right? Golf Tech, maybe has some technology they could help with that. It's always a great idea to invest in your game. I do think it's important to keep an open mind, right? Don't feel like the first person you see, if you don't, really like their teaching style, right? Or if the way that they're trying to describe things doesn't work for you, don't feel like you have to stay with that first person just because, that they were your first teacher. It's definitely something that is subjective, and different approaches are different, fits for you. So, just keep an open mind, but I definitely think it's a great idea. We've had some people in the stream say, "Hey, John, I'd like to get a lesson from you," and so I partnered up with Skillist, and we started offering that pretty recently. So I'm excited that there's been some interest and traction there. Let me see. Who else is asking questions in here? Bart says, thoughts on driver shaft importance? I recently got fit for irons. It was built stiff shafts on irons. Have a driver with regular shaft. In short, I carry my 7-iron about 180, and my driver is average 160. All right, sorry, 260. So yeah, I definitely think it's a great idea to get fit, right? It sounds like you have already seen some benefits in getting fit for the irons. So I think it's a pretty reasonable assumption to say, hey, maybe that would work for the driver too. The nice part about getting fit, as you found with the irons, is you just don't have to wonder anymore, right? Like, I got fit for this driver shaft, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and I love it. It's consistent. So you can just have that confidence knowing, like, hey, I tried everything that was out there, or at least, what's available at retail or wherever you go to get fit. So I think there's definitely something, value to be found in doing a driver fitting. Just really gotta... So what I've been working on in my swing, right, is keeping the takeaway, nice and wide, right, not letting the club head get in this way. And then really just rotating around my spine, trying to keep that club face, square to the path as long as we can. Hopefully, the ball comes out pretty straight. Van Wyn says, what launch monitor do you have? I don't have one set up in here at the moment. I do have a Rapsodo, like a Gen 1, that I use at the range sometimes. And I also have, what's this one called? PRGR. This is I got with the Super Speed training system. And I'll use that at the range sometimes too, mostly for driver, just to, not worry so much about ball speed given the quality of the range balls, but just give myself checkpoints on club head speed. Especially as I'm getting warm, and if I'm doing speed training at the range, you know, it's great to give yourself some quick data and checkpoints. Ghost Recon 99 said, how do I stop slicing? Good question, Ghost Recon. Sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat here. Parker and Rex said hi. Yes, this is the return net. The Net Return Pro Series V2 is what it says up there. So the question about slicing, right? Why do we slice? Well, when the club comes into the ball, right into impact, and the face is open or pointed to the right for a right-handed player, and the path is from the outside to the inside, right, or to the left, right? You can imagine hitting a drop shot in tennis. You'd kind of cut down and across the ball. It wouldn't go very far, right? It would come off with a lot of backspin. Same idea. That's what's happening when you're, you know, coming steeply into the ball, right, with the face open. So if we understand why that's happening, right, you know, the inside takeaway sometimes is the club gets over the top, right, if you've heard that saying. We need to neutralize the path and close the club face, right? So what you need to start to feel is, you know, being able to hook the ball or hit a big draw, right? And you can start slowly. You don't have to make big full swings, right? With, you know, it could be with driver, whatever club you're most struggling with, and just learn how to really get the face turning over, see the ball start to draw. Because I think it's important to develop the skill of club face control, not just say, hey, when I start slicing it, I do this drill, and then I neutralize the path and the face. You know, that's more of a Band-Aid, I think, right? You want to be able to really feel within the context of your own motion and swing, you know, what do I have to do to get the club face, you know, really closing faster into impact? What do I have to do to start the ball, you know, further to the right than where it was before? So hopefully that helps, Ghost Recon. Keegan, amazing. I love the support. Todd said hi. Hey, Todd. Cody said thank you. You're welcome, Cody. Delta Hogs, do golf shoes matter? And Ghost Recon said thank you. You're welcome. I think golf shoes do matter, right? Because, number one, you know, not in this type of environment, right? But when you're out on the golf course, sometimes it's wet, can be slippery. So I think the added traction can be beneficial. I have played golf in metal spikes, and most places, you know, won't let you, but I have a couple of times, you know, thrown those on. And it's definitely beneficial, especially, right, as you think about, as we generate power in the downswing, we're pushing off the ground, using the ground force with this left leg, right? If you've ever seen, you know, a long driver or somebody like Kyle Berkshire, right, when he's really trying to generate speed, they push so hard, this foot comes all the way off the ground, they're hitting off their back foot, right, and this hip is going so fast, the foot plants, you know, behind and to the left somewhere, right? So you can imagine if you're trying to push into the ground, you know, more traction or more pressure that you can generate into that ground via a golf shoe could be beneficial in that effort. So on top of the traction or the comfort, you know, for walking around, there certainly is some, you know, thought behind the shoes being valuable. Mason, what's your best advice for hitting your shot straight every time? Well, first off, understand that, you know, you're never going to hit it super straight every single shot, right? You know, we're swinging a club, you know, between like 80 and 125 miles an hour into a ball on the ground or on a tee, and trying to control the club face, right, within fractions of degrees and millimeters of contact, right? No one's going to hit straight every time. But there are some, you know, some principles that can be helpful to understand, you know, how would I hit the ball straighter? And what that generally looks like is trying to neutralize. And when I say neutralize, I mean get close to zero. Zero being relative to our target line. You know, if you've ever hit on TrackMan or other launch monitors, you know, it'll give you that data, right? You know, club path being positive, you know, positive out to the right or negative to the left, right, relative to our target. So if we want the ball to launch straight and fly straight, we need to, you know, have pretty close to 0 for both our club face relative to path and path relative to target, right, in order to both launch and have it fly straight down our target line. So if we understand that those are the parameters, right, the conditions that we're solving for, what are some ways we can try to achieve that, right? You see, you know, as I was explaining that, put these alignment rods down on either side of the ball, right? And what I'm trying to do with these is give myself feedback on the path, right? So if I'm too, you know, if I approach too far from the inside, I'll hit the stick over here. If I'm too steep and from the outside, I'll hit the stick over here, right? So that's working on training the path to get that, you know, again, pretty neutral, and give yourself some feedback, right? And then, again, you know, not a drill you would do necessarily with a net here, right? But to, you know, train your launch conditions, right? You could use these same sticks out on the range and give yourself a pretty tight window out here, right? You know, in between your target line, right? And you would practice launching your golf ball in between, you know, like a field goal, right? In between the sticks. And if you're able to do that, right, along with the drill we just talked about, you can be on your way to neutralizing or, you know, getting both the face and path, you know, more neutral such that your ball is launching and flying straighter through the air. So hopefully that helps, Mason. Huge fan of Dixon Mayaz. Tell me more, Mulligan. I don't know if I am familiar with them. Blitzen, what's your handicap? Usually between 1 and +1. Keegan, 2 lovers forbidden from one another. A war divides their people, and a mountain divides them apart. Built a path to be together. Yeah, forget the next couple lines, but then it goes... All right, Keegan, you're going to have to tell me more about what I just had to read there. I got lost in the sauce for a second. Gagger says, I'm working on compression. Keeping my elbow close to me has helped a lot. Any tips to help further that? Good question, Gagger. See you, Keegan. Thanks for being here on the stream. So if you've ever, I'm going to borrow this drill from Rory. And the way he describes it is trying to feel like his arms are in front of his chest, his body, throughout the whole swing, right? In the backswing and the downswing. And what he does is he takes a split grip, right? Takes his bottom hand, pushes it down towards, you know, the end of the grip. And, you know, make a normal backswing, right? And then this, you know, as you feel this on the downswing, right, because of that split grip, if I were to come in and try to get in here to hit it, right, I really have to keep my arms, you know, my elbow kind of slides into that slot, right, like you're talking about, Gagger. Yeah, I think it's a great feel, right? You know, for me, what I feel more is trying to keep my hands inside the ball, right, because I tend to get steep, and if my hands are getting closer to the ball, right, then I'm getting steep and over the top of it. But a lot of people have a lot of success with that elbow feel, and I think that's a good way to really start to exaggerate it, to feel it like your arms are really, you know, in front of you as you're rotating, to give yourself that space to hit the ball. So that can be a good one to try. Kay says, why do I hit my driver only as far as my 3-wood? My guess is that some combination of your launch conditions and club head speed, right? I imagine, you know, the driver you're probably swinging faster because it's longer, right? But you might be hitting down on it such that it's, you know, spinning more. Whereas with the 3-wood, you know, maybe the path or the angle of attack is even, you know, neutral, such that, you know, you're launching it with less spin on a similar trajectory. Again, I'm just guessing, right? You'd have to kind of watch and get some numbers. But I'm guessing it's something to do with, you know, not launching the driver at kind of optimal conditions, right? You know, hitting up on it, taking some spin off. Herbert Johnson says, very nice form, I see. Thanks, Herbert. Hazy Hill says, hi, I struggle to get through the ball properly. Don't really swing to a full finish. Think it's costing me distance. Any advice? Well, it'd be helpful to see your swing for sure, but what I typically, where I start, or if somebody's saying like, hey, I'm brand new to golf, where would you start, right? I may be less worried about the finish and really, we'll talk about getting through it, right? That's one thing you mentioned, but I like to really start, talking about the first 2 feet behind and in front of the ball, right? Mostly even kind of behind here, right? This impact position and how we, want to have the club coming into the ball, the path and the club face, right? And starting to learn that at a really slow speed. But if you're struggling to get through it, right? What a great drill, one that I do a lot. You can do this, with both hands or with just your lead hand, right? I really like it with just the lead hand. Practice some swings, right? You start with the club out in front of you, swing it back, and take a step, right? Imagine, almost like a baseball player would, right? And this is just a drill. You're not going to do this in your full swing, but that will help develop that feel of getting your hips moving and through the ball, right, in a better sequence so that you can just, the finish really is just a byproduct of making a nice balanced swing, right? And having your, good sequencing and shifting your weight to your lead side, right? This is just kind of the natural position that I find myself in, right? So give that a try. See if that helps. Noah, what's a good tip to hit the ball center club face? Yeah, definitely. So like we just had, right? Grab some alignment rods, some sticks, and drop them down on either side of the ball, right? So you're giving yourself some feedback here, right? So if you hit it way out on the heel, right, you're going to hit that outside stick, and vice versa. If you catch it way on the toe, the heel of the club will hit the stick over here, right? And you can scale this to, make it as challenging or not challenging as you like, right? You can make it just, barely any room on either side, right? We'll see if I can do this one. And this will give you some immediate feedback, right? If you're not striking it out of the center of the face. So that one might have been fractionally out of the toe. Again, hitting this stick here. So that's a really good one to, again, just give yourself some physical feedback. This is a little tough because it's going to bounce some unless you thin it. But try that at the range. You can put some golf clubs down, use some alignment sticks, something like that. Any tips for the slice in my drive? Yeah, so like we were chatting about Griffin earlier. Understanding that the slice comes from the face being open and the path being kind of across, from the outside to the inside, right? So my best advice for curing the slice is learn how to hit some big hooks, right? What do you have to do to really, get the path, more from the inside, the face turning over, right, to see the ball curving right to left a bunch. Pay attention to what you have to do in your swing, what you feel in your hands. And then you just start to narrow those feels, right, between the one that goes, to the right and the one that goes to the left. And then, you're trying to just narrow that band of outcomes. Herbert says he's the reigning champ at the local Putt-Putt Palace. That's awesome, Herbert. I should be asking you for tips because I miss a bunch of putts. Stoke Jacoby says, what's your club grip? I got into golf about a year ago, managed to get rid of my slice, but I still do not know how to grip the club correctly. All right, so a few key elements when we talk about grip, right? Let's not forget, we're swinging a stick into the ground, and there's, positions or ways that we can hold this stick to make it easier for our body to do that, right? So again, just, imagine you wanted to do nothing besides swing this stick really hard into the ground, right? Well, you're going to notice that getting your hand more on top of it here, right, that's going to feel like a much more powerful, strong position, right, to be able to really, generate some speed. If my hand is kind of underneath it in this weak position, right, I can't really, it doesn't feel right. I'm trying to really just throw it with, the back of my wrist, right? Not a good position for generating speed. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about grip, right? And, what feels right for you. If you were to, again, just think about nothing else besides swinging a stick into the ground. So beyond that, right, we need the club leaning forward, right? The shaft leaning forward at impact. So I think it's, again, important to, when you're first gripping the club or learning how to grip it, that you do so in that position, right? Don't grip it with a neutral shaft and then try to deliver, a forward shaft leaned at impact, right? The grip's going to get weaker. The face is going to open, right? So take your grip the way you would want to hit it. And then from there, it's mostly about, having it in your fingers, right? So my grip looks something like this. I just overlap it with the right hand. It sits on top like that. But again, you can see it's it's really just running through my fingers with both hands, trying to feel like I'm gripping it about a 4 out of 10, maybe a 3 out of 10 in terms of grip pressure. Certainly like it's not going to go flying out of my hands, but I'm not squeezing it to death either. So hopefully that helps on the grip question. What is my handicap? Between 1 and +1. Jeremy says, use foot spray to help yourself see finding the center of the club face at the range. Yes. Hey, G King is here. I remember your comment, G King. Help me with my draw. Can you go in slow-mo? Yeah, so G King, if I remember correctly, you said you already hit your irons pretty straight, right? And you want to draw them more. So if you're hitting it straight currently, that means, your face and path are pretty neutral relative to your target line, right? And if we want to produce a draw, well, we need your path to shift to the right, and we need the club face to be slightly more closed, right, relative to our target than it was before. So to accomplish that, right, I love giving yourself a physical barrier, right? Something you can, put down for a draw. We're going to put it out to the right, slightly behind the ball, right? And this will, keep you from, if you're getting steep and over the top, right, you're going to hit the head cover, and you're really trying to train yourself to swing it from the inside, right, and miss that head cover. You could add a second one. You could even create, sort of like a path, right? You're trying to really exaggerate shifting that path out this way to the right. And while you're doing that, remembering that we need the club face to be closing or be more closed than it was before. And if you start to combine those two things, you should see the ball start to draw more than it was. Does that help, G King? Hey, Free Samples is in here. What's up, Free Samples? Sorry, guys, I'm trying to catch up. Harmonies, any advice for transition? Assuming my backswing is perfect and shift is good, I can stay shallow while doing a pump drill, but come steep in my full swing. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think I struggled with this a little bit myself sometimes. When, again, if I really focus on it, I do the pump drill or otherwise, right, I can really sequence nicely and make a pretty, rotational swing. It's when we get quick on the way down, right, is when we start to early extend because, we run out of time, right? What we really need for the downswing is just more time. And thinking of it that way has been very helpful for me to be like, we don't have to rush getting our hands down through the ball, right? This club is swinging on a much longer arc than our hands are. So we need to let it do that arc, right? And I think that for me has been really beneficial, as a feel to try and keep everything, stay in my posture and down and through it to rotate, as opposed to being like, oh, it's time to swing. A lot of right hand, club goes out, then you got to, extend and tilt to not hit it, either a mile to the right or left. So I know that move really well. Another one for transition that I really like is just even without, making a swing or a club, right? Just make a backswing and then practice that move, right? Just the transition piece into the left heel, right? To just feel like, what does that feel like, right? Even, without trying to swing a club into the ball at high speed. No matter what I do, I seem to hit a weak feeling push fade. Can't seem to fix it even though I understand pace and path. Feels like in practice at home. Yeah, so, Tud, I would try, and what I would suggest is, and I've done this a bunch, is get some swings on video. And even if you don't have a net or way to hit at home, just in your living room, your bedroom, set up a camera, use your phone, and make some swings. You can go in slow motion at first. You can, you can slow it down on your phone afterwards or otherwise, right? But you want to get a sense of what your swing looks like, the shape of it, and try to understand, well, what about that might be causing, those face and path conditions, right? And you start to just go really slow and break it down. And what I like to do is, pull up a swing you like. I go to Scotty Scheffler a lot for irons, and just try to say, okay, well, at least roughly, where's his club head and club face relative to his body and his hands throughout the swing, and then how can I, make my movement more like that, right? So that's one, process that I like doing at home. As far as feels, right? Well, if you know that the face is open and the path is to the right, then the feels you'd want to practice are, more club face rotation or closure into the ball, right? So you could imagine, if you were a home run hitter set up to hit the center field and you want, but actually you decide to hit it down the left field line, right? You'd really have to get the face, going that way. Trying to feel like it's more closure through impact, right? Just so you don't have that open face at impact. How to know where to be set before you swing, like how far away from the ball relative to the club. This is a good question, Eli B 1818. So what I would tell you is, try to find what feels natural for you, but a good place to start is set up to the ball, right? And even without a club, right? Just get into your posture, right? Some amount of hip bend. Your spine is pretty straight, a little bit of, chest on top of the ball, right? And then just feel, where do my hands and my arms hang naturally, right? And you'll notice that's a pretty good spot to start for where you might want to set up, right? Feeling, pretty balanced in your feet laterally, with an iron maybe 60% on your front foot, right? If I stand too close to the ball, something like this, right, and I drop the club, my hands move away from me. So I know that's, and vice versa, right? If I was really far away like this, my hands naturally are going to come towards me. So that can be a good checkpoint. I was also taught a long time ago, you can use, like the width of your hand, right, on the end of the club, and connect it to, your belly button, your midsection, right, as kind of a rough guide, if you're really unsure. And that's something that, will develop as you, make more swings and get more comfortable setting up to the ball consistently. Important to stay hydrated here. Does that help, Eli? Hopefully it's helpful. Mason Weaver says, I have a tendency to swing under the ball a lot. Any good drills? When you say under the ball, Mason, do you mean like you're hitting it on the top of the club? Like skying it up into the air? I just want to make sure that I answer your question in a helpful way. And if you guys are enjoying the stream or, find some of these questions and answers helpful, feel free to drop a like or hit the subscribe button if you're feeling generous. It really does help trying to grow this platform and do more of this stuff. Abel, cover P6 position, how to enter and how to exit it. Well, I tend to have a lot of beginners in here, so I don't know if going to, position system like that is always my first instinct. But Abel's talking about P6 is, when the shaft is parallel back down into impact, right? So, about to impact the ball. I like to still, have a bunch of wrist angle in it, right? So it's, somewhat shallow, steeper on the way back, and then maintaining the wrist angle in here, right? So this is P6, something like that. And then from there, you can just rotate and hit it. But if that's, if that sort of system that Abel mentions is helpful for you, right, to understand like, P0, P1, right, really where the positions in the swing are, I personally think it's more important to have a repeatable and functional golf swing, right, rather than one that is perfectly in these positions, but it definitely is a system that works for certain people. Do you recommend that hitting that, looking into that one, how is it holding up? Oh, you're talking about the net, Don? Yes, I do really recommend the net. This is the Net Return Pro Series. It's certainly a premium price net, but it definitely feels worth it, right? I was saying the other day on the stream, it feels like I could hit into this thing for a decade, right? And break it down, pack it up, move it around with me if I needed to. It does feel really well built. So I've been pretty happy with it. I should put the link for that in here too. I think you guys get a discount. I might have a code. Hazy Hill says, thanks very much. We'll try that. And then somebody else asks, is your grip interlocking? No, my grip at the moment right now is this overlap. Right, so this right pinky just sits on top, on the outside here. Should my driver grip and iron grip be different? No, I don't think so. Yes, Anthony is correct, right? The face needs to be pointed in between the target and the path. So, yeah, if I miscommunicated that, I appreciate the help, Anthony. If you're just getting started, which clubs would you recommend? I think it's important to understand, the golf industry wants you to think, I need 14 brand new clubs and fancy shoes and a bag. I think quite the opposite, right? You can get started in golf and learn a lot and have a ton of fun with like 4 clubs, and your sneakers. I think that there's a lot of good secondhand, either, shops in different cities, or eBay is a great resource. I'm a big proponent of grabbing like a used driver, a couple irons, like an 8 iron and a 4 or 5 iron, learning how to hit those. Grab some sort of sand wedge or a pitching wedge, to chip, and a putter. And, just start hitting balls, start learning about the swing. Find some drills to learn about impact and how to hit the ball. You don't need fancy clubs and equipment to start learning and getting better at golf. What is your preparation H1? This question is from Jeremy. Jeremy, do you mean like hole 1? Hole 1 and hole 2 is my blow-up holes. I think that's what you mean. I try to think about them all as like independent events, right? So there's 18 holes of golf. We're going to hit the ball, I don't know, high 30s, low 40s amount of times and putt it some amount of times, right? And we're going to be out there for 4 or 5 hours, right? So these are all, independent events. I try to think of them that way and not get too about like, oh man, I made a double on one, so I got to, be more aggressive to try and get to my target score. I don't think that's a great way to play golf and score. I've definitely tried it for a long time. Been like, oh man, I made another bogey. You got to make up for it, right? But I think there's a lot to suggest that it's better to think about these things as kind of independent events that are not correlated to each other, right? And that the total score at the end will be better if we think of it that way. Octavio said hi. Hey, Octavio. And then I'm sorry, it doesn't. It just shows the characters. Do you bow your left wrist at the top of the backswing? I don't. My left wrist at the top is really square. In all the, the video that I see of it. Because again, I really I'm trying not to have the club face really rotate much. Right, I'm not trying to have it, fly open on the way back and then slam shut on the way through. So I try to keep that, pretty neutral. Groundhog Hunter said hi. Hey there. Quality or quantity at the range? I think both, but for different things, if that makes sense. So for quantity, I think if you are trying to make a swing change or really work on, your impact conditions, right? I think there's a lot to be said about reps. And I did a ton of reps a couple of years ago when I wanted to improve my iron striking, right? Where I would just, preset my impact condition, right? And I just did that drill over and over and over and over again to really, train myself to deliver a quality impact position, right? But where the quality portion comes in is I think it is important too. You can save, say your last 10 balls, your last 20 balls at the range for execution practice, right? Because we're on the golf course. We can't just grab another ball and, have another whack at it, right? We have, one chance to hit the best shot we possibly can in that moment. And if you want to do that as often as possible, right, we need to practice. And for me, it all came back to routine, right? So I do the same thing behind the ball, but, before every shot, pretty much everywhere on the golf course. I have a putting routine. On the greens, I do the same thing every single time. And when I'm hitting full shots, I do the same thing every single time, right? It's one practice swing behind the ball. I get in. I have a target somewhere in front of me, right? I set up to that target. Kind of keep my feet moving while I'm settling into the shot. Waggling the club a little bit. And then I hit it, right? And it's pretty consistent even if you were to time it. So I think that's kind of a long-winded two-part answer to your question, Octavio, but hopefully that's helpful. Jada says, I just got a golf net hit into for my birthday. That's amazing. Very cool. What do you do when your pelvis sore? I don't know if that's a real question or a golf question. I stretch a lot to try and keep my body moving. Free Sample says, makes me so happy to see your channel grow, brother. You deserve it. Oh, that's so very nice of you, Free Samples. I'm grateful for all of you, all my OG ticket holders who have been here, supporting us, helping grow the channel from the very beginning. So thank you to Free Samples and everybody else who's, keeps coming back, enjoying this stuff. Francisco says, my miss is a left hook ball on my drive. What's 1 to 2 changes I can make during my round tomorrow? Well, I'm not going to answer your question exactly because I'm going to say I don't think you should try to change it during the round. But if you do have a chance to, warm up before the round or, to work on some swings tonight, if you're hitting the big snap hook, right, you really need to get the face more open at impact, right, so that you don't get that big curve on it. You can play with a little push or, a little pull, right? Something that's, where the face is a little more neutral. But playing that big snap hook is going to be really tough, right? So the feels that you'll want to work on, and I saw JT talking about this drill just recently, and somebody was recording him on the range, and he was trying to feel the club face more open on the way back, and he was like truly like swinging it like this, like pointing at the sky, like, as open as you could fan the club to try and exaggerate that feeling, right? And I'm not suggesting you have to take it to that extreme the way he does, but the feel you're going to look for is, some amount more opening in the club face such that when you come back into impact, right, it's not going to be so shut or pointed to the left that the ball is going to have a big curve. And then I think, try to, hit some fades on the range when you're warming up before the round. Try to see some balls, turning the other way. Right? And then the last couple, 2, 3 driver swings you have, just pick a target and make a swing and see what shape comes out. And then, from there, adjust as you're going through the day. But just get a sense of what your swing is feeling like for that day and play your best to hit it at targets. Matt Arneson, 25 handicapper, 150 budget, 3-wood recommendations. So I would go to like eBay or golfworks.com has a good classified section somewhere online and look for something that's like 2 model years old, right? So maybe like a Stealth 2 generation if you're looking at TaylorMade. I'm not familiar enough with the other brands offhand, but like a 2023 model year, I think it's probably still a really phenomenal golf club that's you could buy for in that price range. If not, maybe even last year's, right? If you find a deal on one or one that's used, maybe isn't in the best shape aesthetically, but that's where I would look. Braun to Shifty, what's your biggest tip? Biggest tip, if you say like one thing, right? For any golfer, truly like first time hitting a ball to, just a tip that could work for anybody, right? Is practice impact, right? We all know, golf swings can look very different. Jim Furyk can swing it up like this and back in here, and John Rahm can be, super flat and bowed and in here, right? But what they have in common is that, their position of the club and the face and the handle, right, relative to their body and to the golf ball, when they strike the ball are pretty consistent, right? There are some, important principles, and I think we should train people from impact backwards, right? So I think a lot of beginners, they see pros on TV and they're like, I have to make this big long swing and try and hit the ball super far. I think you'll, and I've seen it myself, with people that I've helped coach. If you start with, making small swings at a slower speed and understanding, we got to be hitting, we're talking about irons here, some amount, down and into the ball, right, with the shaft and the handle forward, right, and our hips are open, right, so something like that, and just teach people, what does it feel like to hit it, even if it only goes 50 yards, right, but to strike the ball properly, to see it come out on, a pretty straight flight, right, feeling it launch up into the air, we all know that feeling, right, when you hit one nicely, and teaching people how to really, I'm maybe even doing it too fast now, right? But just really learn how to compress the ball. And then you add speed to it, right? Then you make the swing longer and see what your body wants to do. But no one's going to get worse at golf by, practicing their impact position. Nate says, irons and wedges pulling left. Any tips? So quick one would be, you try moving the ball back in your stance, right? Because the club's swinging on an arc, the further left, right? The further up in the arc, the more the face is going to be pointed to the left, right? Whereas behind us, pointed more to the right. So that could be a quick one, right? If your ball position, tends to creep forward, you might start hitting some pulls. But otherwise, right, the launch is going to be dictated mostly by where the face is pointed. So, maybe the face could be square and you could be really, coming across it. But again, you'd have to kind of get some numbers and see what is impact position. So when we talk about impact, we're talking about the moment that we strike the ball, right? And my point is, somebody like Matthew Wolff or some of these really intense swings, you can swing the club all around your head, all kinds of places, right? Over here, back here, right? What the golf ball cares about is what the club is doing at the moment you hit it, right? So we call that the impact position. And there are some key, like I was saying, some kind of key principles that you want to see, that are consistent across, good ball strikers. Garrett says hi. Octavio said, thanks so much, my man. You're the best. Thanks, Octavio. If you guys are enjoying the stream and you want to subscribe, that would be awesome. Mendy World, I fix my slice by swinging around my body. Is that a temporary fix or permanent in your opinion? I say if it works and you're finding, it's fixed the issue And, you know, the ball will tell you, right? If it's flying straighter, it's going further, then it's liking what you're doing. So I wouldn't feel compelled to change it. Nipsaw says that video of JT was extreme. Yeah, it was. That was crazy, right? I'm glad somebody else saw that. What shafts am I running? These are C tapers. I think this is the S Plus in 125 grams C tapers in my irons. The new 7-wood has this Dark Wave 70-gram X-Flex shaft in it that I just got because it was you know, low launch, low spin profile in the flex that I wanted for the 7-wood. So I didn't get fit for that one specifically, but the shafts I haven't fit into, in addition to the C tapers, are these Oban Kiyoshi purple 0.5 flex shafts. So I have these in like my 3-wood, 5-wood, and driver. Although the 3-wood's been mostly on the bench for a while, just not having a good, you know, gap or need to hit the 3-wood. Braun says, thanks, you're awesome, love your lives. Very cool. Thanks, Braun, I appreciate that feedback. Have you tried Mizuno irons? If so, what do you think about the Mizuno feel? Is it legit different from other top brand irons? No. No. It's really good. Like, I've never hit a Mizuno iron and was like, man, that felt terrible. Yeah, I gamed Mizuno irons for some time. But I've hit a bunch of them, and I've hit pretty, you know, all the, you know, some version of forged irons from every manufacturer. They're in my opinion, they're all pretty similar. You know, some of them, like the Mira irons, maybe you could say are like, wow, there's, you know, something that does feel a little different. That also could be psychological, you know, but if anything, it's super incremental. You know, it's a forged piece of metal, right? There's only so many ways to make it, you know, sound and feel different. Mr. Random, how do you create that 90-degree angle with your arm on the backswing? And then Nate says, thanks very much. Just subscribe. Keep up the good work and sportsmanship. Oh, awesome, Nate. I appreciate that. It's very cool. Thank you guys for all the support. So Mr. Random asks, how do we create the 90-degree angle with the arm? Right? And what I want you to think about is that being more of a result of what we're doing with the club in the backswing, as opposed to like a thing that we're trying to make happen, right? It's going to happen on its own if we, you know, swing the club the way we want to. So if you've ever seen it at, you know, an amusement park or a carnival, the pirate ship ride, right? That, you know, it looks like a ship and then it goes up and it swings up and down, right? And it kind of, you know, they give it a lot of energy at the bottom to send it up there. And then its momentum carries it down and it goes really fast at the bottom. And then you kind of hang there up in space at the top. Right, that's what we want the swing almost to feel like, right? Such that the speed really happens as close to the bottom, right, at impact as possible. We don't need the club to be moving fast back here, right? We need it to be moving fast when it hits the ball. So with that in mind, right, on the backswing, what we're trying to do is get some energy into the club, right, such that we can then transfer it back in the downswing into the ball. So the first part of the backswing, right, is really just giving it some energy and feeling it track up, kind of out our target line, right? So if this is our target line extended behind us, right, we're kind of throwing that club backwards behind us. And from your position, you should see it kind of track along that target line, right? We want this width, right? We have to use the leverage, right, to generate speed. So I'll get to my point here in a second, Mr. Random, right? So we're throwing the club back, we're giving it some energy, right? And then as it hinges up around our body, right, that's where that angle that you're talking about, right, this 90-degree angle, is kind of just a reaction to, you know, us needing to stop the backswing, transfer the energy, and start the downswing. Right, so if you go back to the pirate ship, right, we put some energy into it, and then it hangs there almost for a second, and then we let it start falling down and goes fast at the bottom. Right, so we send it up, And then as it hinges, right, because our hands, this club is traveling on a bigger arc, a wider arc than the arc of our hands. So that angle is a result of that moment of changing the direction. Does that make sense? Hopefully that's helpful answering your question. John M. Second Nate. Tell me more. I have a hard time transferring my weight forward on impact. Any tips or drills? From Jay Ward. Yeah, great one. I still do this sometimes. You know, if I'm out, you know, waiting for a flight or something, just standing around doing nothing. You know, if you're just standing, like standing in your golf posture, you know, make some sort of backswing, and then just practice this feeling of transferring your weight from the front part, you know, the big toe, the inside part of this left foot, down and into the heel, right? You'll see, you know, I still lift my heel on pretty much every swing to help me feel that sequence, right? Because I know if I get that foot down and I'm transferring my weight, right, you know, a lot of good things are going to happen. So I think just practicing that movement and feeling that is a great place to start, right? You don't even need a club. You don't need to be able to hit balls, right? But just feel that weight transfer and what that feels like, right? You'll feel, you know, yourself getting your chest moving down and to the left, right? Your weight shifts, you know, into this left glute. So that's a good one I would start with. Like and subscribe, guys. Helps John out more than you know. This guy is the real deal. Well, I appreciate that. Free samples, gassing us up, pumping the channel up. 110 people and only 25 likes. Double tap that screen, y'all. Thank you very much for the support, guys. He is right. It does make a difference. You know, just trying to get more people to see this stuff and add some value. You know, it's helpful to me, right? I demonstrate these drills, so I'm doing them and, you know, trying to make my own game better. So, lots to be grateful for. You know, zooming past 1,300 subscribers already. Tons of support on the live streams, right? We had like almost 70 new subscribers on a live stream recently. So I've got 9-iron here, right? And again, I'm just trying to focus on, like we were just talking about with the pirate ship, right? Because for me, I tend to get quick jerking the club down. So for me, I really need to exaggerate that feeling of sending it up, waiting, boom, then we hit it. Right? And again, I recommend trying to work on this stuff at like half speed. Right? So if I have a 9-iron here, maybe I'll try to hit it like 50 yards. But I'm really going to exaggerate that. Boom. You know, just holding that angle until we get to the bottom, right? Trying to smooth out that transition. Trying to make the swing look nice for you guys. So you can say, yeah, you know, I watched John Young. He's got a great swing. Someday that'll be true. It's getting pretty good. It's getting okay. It's getting a lot better. What's your favorite course that you've ever played? Mr. Random. Oh, it's such a great question. I'm not sure I could even pick one. I played so many amazing golf courses, and, you know, I could have answers that are like, this was the best round I played, or, you know, I had the most fun, or was the most interesting, or, you know, I enjoyed the company the most. It's probably a Core Crenshaw course if you made me pick, you know, like just from a pure golf experience, like what's your favorite? Like Old Sandwich for me is really high up there. Yeah, I'd have to think about that. Typical flow. I feel like I'm chopping down on the ball. How can I fix that? So if you feel like your swing is overly steep, right? Like if you're really, hitting super down on it, right? And let's assume, does that, if that means that your swing is also, producing a big slice, right? If you're really steeping on top of it. So one of my favorite drills to go to is putting a head cover down, or you could use like an old box of golf balls, an empty one, and set that down, outside and to the right of your ball, right, when you're on the range. And this will give you some feedback, right? So if your swing is getting really steep and over the top, right, you're going to hit that head cover. You won't be able to get to the ball. So this will force you to practice, a different swing, right? One where the club head stays a little bit more outside on the way back and then comes from the inside on the way through, right? So in slow motion, it's, outside and then inside, in to out or shallow, right? More neutral. And when we do that, we won't hit the head cover. So I'm a big fan of giving yourself some physical feedback, right? Something that's, going to force you to not hit it with your club. Red Mamba asks, oh, Jay Ward says, I'll try that. Thank you and subbed. Amazing, Jay. Thank you so much. Red Mamba, what tips do you have for getting more consistent contact with the 3-wood? Any drills to help with the 3-wood swing? Sure. So when I'm, again, you're gonna hear me say this a lot, right? I'll grab the 7. Actually, you know what? I have a 3-wood over there. Just grab this one. Right? You just heard me say, we need feedback, right? So if you're struggling with contact and not hitting it out of the center of the face, right, which I think is what you said, give yourself some sort of gate, right? Some way to produce feedback such that when you're on the range, you're not just guessing out there trying to say like, oh, well, maybe I make a good swing and hit it out of the center, right? But give yourself something that, if you don't make the swing you want, you'll get some feedback, right? And use that as a way to adjust your motor pattern, right? So I think some keys for hitting 3-wood, especially off the deck, right, is feeling, a lot of balance, right? Contact is like 90% of what we're thinking about, not trying to hit it super hard. Again, this is, for me, things that have been helpful. And we're just trying to make a smooth swing, right? We want to hit it out of the center of the face, nice and smooth, right? And, you'll notice we didn't hit either of those sticks. The ball came out of the center of the face nicely. So, and again, you can scale this. You can make it more or less difficult depending on your ability level. So give that a try. See if that helps hitting the 3-wood off the deck. Owen says, having trouble with pulling my head up on downswing and exposing the hosel. Any tips? Mr. Random says the swing is beautiful, by the way. Thanks, Mr. Random. Okay, so let me answer Owen's question. If you're really, like coming out of it, or you're saying, pulling your head up, right? Maybe you're getting up and into the ball, right? So your head's coming up, you're extending this way, right? That's what I imagine, we might see on video, just based on what you said. So if your head's really coming up, right, and you're trying to what you're trying to do is make room for the club, right? Because you don't have enough space to swing it because of probably something in the takeaway, right? So your head's coming up, you're tilting back to try and get the club to the ball, and sometimes it sounds like you're exposing the hosel and hitting one of those dreaded S words, right? So ultimately what you're going to want to try to work on feeling is more of, a rotational type swing, right? Where you can keep your head and body kind of on or behind the ball, right? And give yourself, what you're really trying to feel is having space, right? You need room and time to deliver the club nicely, right? So what I would recommend doing, we talked about this earlier, right? But this split grip drill, and this will help you really feel what has to happen, right? You have to, compress this right side with our ribs and rotate our hips open, right? So if you make, make some backswings and downswings with this split grip, and then from there take it into impact, right? And feel how that feels different than if you're, extending and coming out of your posture. What we want to feel is like the swing, largely just rotates around our spine, right? This is our backswing. This is our downswing, right? So hopefully that helps. Owen? Thomas, early extension help. Oh, perfect. We just talked about that. Typical flow. I'll take that to the range and subbed. Amazing. Thank you so much. Size says hello. Red Mamba says thank you. I'll try that when practicing the 3-wood at the range. And subscribed. Amazing. Thank you very much. How do you get deeper with the backswing? I early extend to George Genghis style get Gucci. I love it. Yeah, I like George's teaching a lot. The way he really simplifies things. I do think some of the positions he teaches are on the extreme side, right, with some of the wrist stuff. But so yeah, I've struggled with early extension basically forever. And the thing that finally clicked for me pretty recently, to be honest, was just understanding that, like, because the club head has to travel on such a longer arc than the arc of our hands, right? It needs that time at the top in transition to do that, right? Because that arc has to be longer. So my early extension was always, because I was getting to the top of the swing and saying, great, time to go. We're ripping the handle down, right? A ton of right hand, club steepens, right? Goes out this way. So then to hit it and neutralize the path in the face, you have to extend and tilt, right? And I got really good at it, right? I can show you guys swings from January of this year where I was, flushing it, right? And it was just, super steep, extend and tilt, right? And just throw the club with not a lot of rotation. And so, yeah, it's you can hit the ball that way. So yeah, an understanding of just we need that time in transition to really allow us, because again, the early extension is just a result of it's a symptom, not a cause, right? Of not having enough time. So when you give yourself that time, right, by practicing, right, I like doing the pump drill, really feeling like that slowness in transition, right? Like your hands are, kind of moving in molasses. And what I found was just immediately an improvement in the quality of my strike, right? Both, laterally, not hitting it out of the toe so much for me, and compression-wise, just feeling like I was really flushing it. A whole bunch. So another drill I love for the extension stuff is pushing my toes up into the tops of my shoes and hitting shots that way, right? Because you can't really extend from that position. You kind of fall over. So if you've seen some guys sometimes put a ball under their right foot. I like just feeling like I'm pulling my toes up off the ground, right? And then learning how to hit shots that way. Right, you can still make a quality balanced swing that way, but you have to really stay in your posture and rotate. Right, you can't really, if you try to go quick and extend, you're gonna, like I just did, start falling over and doing crazy stuff. So that's some stuff that I've found on the way, trying to work on it. What about pausing at the top? Yeah, same exact idea from size. It's not I like it as a feel. But I have a hard time actually achieving a pause and actually consistently striking the ball. For me, it has to feel kind of like a 1-2 kind of thing. But it's a great drill, especially to, right, just kind of augment the, the double pump So all kind of shades of the same thing. Yeah, that's such a good one, right? Just giving yourself, you know, force yourself to feel the lower body start sooner, right? Because that's really what part of what we're solving for is sequencing. When we're talking about early extension, just trying to get everything to, you know, work in the proper order. All right, guys, probably hit for a few more minutes. Dang, you nailed it, John. Thank you. Thanks, Size. I appreciate that. Glad to be helpful. You know, that's most of why I'm doing this, right? Is try and share some of what I've learned just working on my own game over the last, I don't know, 20 years. That was out of the toe. And, you know, that's what's so addicting about this game, right? Is, you know, I've been a better than a +1, and I know I can get better. So I'm going to keep working on it. And, you know, having you guys' support on the channel is a huge part of that. You know, getting all the feedback and, you know, adding value to people, you know, makes it that much easier to, you know, spend the time to go film, go, you know, get out here and do the live streams. So I really do appreciate it, guys. Just need the weather to get better because, gosh, I'm tired of hitting inside. I really want to get out and play some golf, but it has been cold and dreary and wet, and none of those things are good for playing golf. We are, unfortunately, in our game at the mercy of the outside, Mother Nature. I've signed up for 2 lessons. Should I find my favorite coach and stick to them? Should I try different coaches until I find one I really like? I'm a fan of trying different, you know, taking a lesson from maybe 2 or 3 different people, and unless you really vibe with somebody and their style is immediately kind of, it's, you know, in sync with yours, and they're speaking your language, so to speak, right? I think it's a good idea to you know, try and see what else is out there, right? Because if you know, say you try a couple different lessons, a couple different teachers, and the first one you really liked, you can always just go back to them. You know, I've had lessons from all kinds of different teachers, and some of them I was like, dude, I don't know, I could have saved, you know, my money and didn't add a ton of value. And other ones I'm like, man, you totally get what I'm feeling, what I'm trying to think about. So, you know, if my style resonates with you, like I was saying earlier, we did start offering some online lessons, and the initial reviews have been super positive, so that's been awesome. You know, nice to hear people are like, hey, this resonated with me. I was willing to, you know, spend my own money on it, and it worked, right? You know, having folks come back and say, like, my ball striking is getting better. You know, the stuff you were saying is working. So I never expected to have that level of, you know, audience support this early in my YouTube, you know, experience. But it's been really cool. So we're going to keep offering that. You know, I know golf is already expensive enough, and, you know, to ask people to spend more money to try and get better is always tough. But obviously, I think that personalized instruction, you know, is in the long run going to be much more beneficial than, you know, new equipment or, you know, the latest FootJoy golf shoes. Find one you can relate with. I think I just found my coach with John. Oh, that's awesome, Size. Thanks very much. Is 71 good for a 14-year-old? Yeah, 71 is good for everybody. That's a great score. Mary said hi. Hey, Mary. Do you like the Rogue Callaway driver and woods? Oof. I've never been a fan of the Callaway look, right? Just the shape of their woods. It doesn't suit my eye. But I'm sure they do perform well, right? They're a quality manufacturer. ANC Sports, do you like the Stealth 2 stuff? Yeah, I do. I still have a couple Stealth 2 woods. This is the 3 wood that hasn't been in the bag for a while, but the 5 wood, you guys have seen me hitting a bunch on the channel. Still in the bag. These are all Stealth 2s. And the driver's a QI10. And the 7 wood is brand new. That's a QI35. Are you a PGA pro? No, I am not a PGA pro. Just a guy who loves golf. So one's through PJ Hope, 6 free lessons, and the other one's $150 for an hour with someone who played on the PGA Tour. Well, that seems worth it, right? You know, try some different stuff. And certainly, if somebody, you know, made it far enough as to play on tour, they, you know, presumably have a valuable knowledge they could share with you. That seems like a quality place to go for a lesson. It's important to practice the twirl, right? Because you want to do it, you want everything to be, you know, routine, right? So it's, you know, great swing, flush it, twirl. You can't just start trying to break out twirls when you're on the golf course. You want everything to feel, I'm mostly kidding, guys, just to be clear. But I do think, you know, practicing your routine and your feels, you know, before you get out on the course is a good idea. It was only when the comment section got involved that I really learned how to give it a nice tight twirl. What's the name of the net and how big is it? I'm trying to get a good golf net for my house from Eitan. This is the Net Return Pro Series. It's definitely a premium price, but I've been very impressed with the quality of it. It's about, I think, 8 feet tall and 8 feet wide or so. Maybe 7 feet tall. No, I think it's about 8 feet. And it's maybe 3.5 feet front to back, right? And the frame of this is right up against that wall behind me. And I've never had an issue, you know, hitting the wall or ricochets like you might have with some of the lower quality ones. So I've been a big fan of it. I've really enjoyed having access to, you know, basically a driving range anytime I want, right? I can come in here and practice. You know, if you're like me, sometimes if you're thinking about your swing, you're like, man, I wish I could just go practice that feel. Like, you know, you're just thinking about your swing, you have a little breakthrough, you know, but it's 8 o'clock at night and you're, you know, in your living room. Well, now I can just run outside, come in here and work on it. You know, my wife thinks I'm a lunatic, but that's okay. Boom. I've been trying to feel a lot of Tommy Fleetwood in my swing, right? So nice and short, compact, and then stop fast, right? Almost like, not like we're actually hitting a knockdown shot, but really trying to have a tight 3/4 finish. Right? All right, guys, that's going to do it for tonight's stream. Let me answer John's last question really quick here. Does the palm of your right hand cover the middle finger of your left hand, or is the palm of your right hand completely connected to the club? The palm does cover the left thumb a little bit, right? So it kind of sits on top. The grip is mostly in the fingers, right? And then the palm is kind of just off on the side, right? But most of the contact with the club that I feel, especially with the right hand, is in my fingers here. Does that help? The net is $6.95, Eton. Pretty sure for this one. But yeah, it's called Net Return. I'll start putting the code in the description if you guys are interested. I think you get a nice little discount with my code. So I'll do better and share that on the next stream if you're interested in getting one. But yeah, thank you guys all for being here. And we will talk to you guys next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Really grateful for all the support, and we're going to keep doing this stuff. So we'll see you next time.